Welcome back to the Air Crown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice little second day of January 2022, of which we are preparing for a very long-term analysis as it is Sunday. So please excuse the clickbait title and the old stupid face on the thumbnail as well. But we're all here now, so it's all good in the hood. And we're going to be going over very long-term price action. We will briefly go over the short-term price action as well. But yesterday's video is still very much relevant for that purpose. So without further ado, I also want to make sure that people who are interested in any one of the programs understand that there is a sale still going on for 20% off. A little bit more than half a day left to go with that. And if you go into the actual store over here from the banner on the CrownChain application, which of course can be found in the first link in the description below at app.crownchain.net, and by the way, all of this is free for right now as well. Well, you can go into the store over here and you will be met with a bunch of promotional videos for each and every one of the programs, both indicators and programs themselves, that are going to explain who they're for, who they're not for, what to expect, and then you as a rational adult can make the decision for yourself, and I'll trust you with that. But what I always want to say with these things is, hey, and I really just want to disqualify a shit ton of people right off the bat here. Basically, look, you're going to take a lot of effort, a lot of work on your own behalf. There is no such thing as a magical pill, as I just said. And realistically, we find for the TA programs, the educational programs especially, it takes about a year to a year and a half of that consistent, dedicated effort in order to kind of get where you want to be. So please do understand that, it is going to require a lot of effort on your own behalf. And while we're happy to have you, I do want to make sure that, most people, it's just not like reasonable for, because, well, like you probably have a life, and not time to, put to really invest into this. So without further ado, I do want to get into the price action charts now. We will swing back around to the market data a little bit later, as that will be relevant for this analysis. But for right now, it's going to be a long video, I do suspect. So I want to start it off with, of course, the general look on this one. This is the same shit that we've been looking at for a little bit over a month now. And of course, it is still very much relevant. This chart is very elegant and simplistic, which is in some ways good. And if we're looking at the short and medium term timeframes, the range is as the range has been for about a month and a half now, which is $52,000 to the upside versus about $45,500 to the downside on a higher term time frame closure. A break or a resolution of that range would imply big continuations to the next very good areas you have ridden out over, or as I have ridden out over here. In this case, to the upside, above $52,000 range highs, I am looking towards big bad moves towards $59,000-ish dollars, we'll call it, and then very likely continuation on to prior all-time highs and new all-time highs after that. And by the same token, and a very big point right here as well, is that Bitcoin below the $41,000 region right here would be quote unquote very bad. Why is that? Very bad for the bulls, obviously. And that is because that would destroy the biggest thing going for the bulls right now, and probably the most important thing that could possibly be like relevant at all, which is the weekly trend, as you would be having, or Bitcoin would more importantly be having, lower lows after that, and very likely imply big bad price action back down to the $35,000 region. So I want to make a little bit of a big statement here right off the get-go. I do not believe that Bitcoin will be closing this is any daily dodos below $37,000 from here on out. If that does happen, well, it's not that I don't think that it can't happen. Of course it can fucking happen. But if we're going to go look at the statistics of this, I'll explain why, and then what to expect if that were to happen. And just right off the bat, if it were to happen, well, very likely going to see back down around your last $30,000 base or so. And then we get to play the game of, is this your next macro cycle high or not? But for right now, as long as Bitcoin's above $41,000, I do think that is still very much fine for the long term. And for the short and medium term, if Bitcoin loses 45,500, I would be looking for a test down around there, and a bounce, more importantly, first and foremost. And my personal view is that Bitcoin probably does put in a major low, whether it be kind of where we're at right now or all the way down at the low $41,000 region by retracing that wick. Okay, so let's get into why I believe that. Why do I believe that Bitcoin is essentially unlikely, or very unlikely based off the statistics, to close below, especially $37,000? Doesn't mean that we can't get wicks below. Certainly we can, but no closures on a daily closing basis below there. Well, that would be due to the fundamental chart over here, of which we're going to go over the daily hash ribbon signal, or just any hash ribbon signal. I mean, you could put any fucking time frame on this, but the daily is the time frame that is going to be most relevant for this. And what I'm referring to is this pane right here, where you see these buy and capitulation signals essentially And they've been very, very consistent in the history of Bitcoin for a major reason. I'm actually going to put it on a weekly here for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my drawing tools, and you'll notice that I have an absolute metric shit ton of these vertical blue bars here. What do they all represent? They all represent an iteration of the blue buy signal on the hash ribbons indicator being ticked off. And what's interesting about this, because we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 iterations of this, and we probably even have a little bit more than that if we do go over, if we really like nail it down, but basically 12 of those really, really good ones. Only one of those iterations has been a bit of an issue. And what I mean by this is that anytime the interpretation of this, anytime, key point, we've seen a blue buy signal printed on this indicator, the prior daily low to that blue buy signal has never been closed below ever again in Bitcoin's history ever. All of those 12 iterations except for one. That one iteration would be, of course, in the old flu dump times. And actually, now that I look at it, there is more than 12 iterations, but I did kind of take the liberty of just, putting this as one right here, because it is basically the same thing as one. But technically speaking, there is two. And I believe if I fully counted out, it's somewhere around like 16, 17, or 18, something like that. But again, because some of those ones were so close to each other and they didn't really make a difference, I decided not to mark them off on this chart. Otherwise, it just kind of muddies up the data. But just full, disclosure right there. So first, let me go over the interpretation of this, what this essentially looks like, and then we'll go over the one iteration where this did not work out. So here we have a blue buy signal. This was in 2nd of December of the year 2020, so just about a year ago, a little bit more than that now. And what I'm saying is that the daily low prior to that signal, which would be right here, was never closed below ever again, ever in Bitcoin's history. Since then, obviously, I mean, this one was rather simple right here because it's only about $17,000, or it's $17,000. You get my point. But basically, that area, while it can get retested, even get some wicks below, that's fine. But we don't see any daily closures below that low ever again. Since then, I'll give you one more example, or I'll give you a couple more examples just so that you can have the full information as well. Same thing over here. This one from 12th of July in 2020, that same year. And what do you know? Where is our last daily low before that? That would be basically right here at about 8,900 to 9,000. Doesn't really matter. It's the same interpretation no matter what. That level is never closed below on a daily dildo ever again. Since then, I mean, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. Then we have another one right here. This one coming in from April 24th of the year 2020. And again, where's your daily low before that? That would be right here at about 6,700 or so. And of course, does Bitcoin ever come back down and close below there ever again? No, it doesn't. In fact, this one doesn't even really test around it. Now, there is one iteration where this does not hold true. And where is it? It's right here, actually. Right here, March 2020. And again, this spans all the way back to the genesis of Bitcoin for like 12, 13 years now. And this one, obviously, where is your daily low before this blue buy signal was printed? Here. I mean, either one of those is fine. My point is that this one obviously does close below. That's the only one out of technically like 17 or 18 iterations, although it really only counted as like 12, that's ever happened throughout the 12, 13 year history of Bitcoin. The reason why this is relevant right now, and the reason why I'm calling this one out, is the same reason why I was focusing on it so much about a few months ago in August, especially, where we were getting a blue buy signature right here actually. This was basically 7th, 8th of August, very early August basically. And you can see the daily low prior to that was about $37,000. Now, does Bitcoin test around it again? Yeah, it does. That's fine. You can even get wicks below that. Again, completely fine. No closures below it, however, very, very important. So this is something that has a very, very high probability, historically speaking. And for what it's worth, the one iteration where that did not hold through, many people would argue, I don't know if I'd join that, but it was basically a black swan. Either which way, of course, black swans have a non-zero probability to be happening, but it is rather low, being that it is a fucking black swan. But you get my point. There are counterpoints to this. But for right now, that would imply that Bitcoin does not come down and close anywhere below about a little bit above $37,000 at this point. If it does, then that goes out by the wayside, and we're probably getting ready for maybe another black swan situation, and very likely going to see back down around the low $30,000 summer bases, which probably gives it at least another bounce, but I would not trust it more than that, to put it bluntly. So for right now, Bitcoin still has the higher lows, obviously. Now, that is important for the long term, obviously, because even if Bitcoin is going to come down, it does essentially make me still more on the buy side of this asset, or looking for perhaps long-term buys if I am of that, of that nature, I guess, which is going to be relevant for some people, not relevant for others. If you're more short and medium term time frame, you don't give a fuck about this. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. And I can definitely join that side as well. But this is kind of fun to do on YouTube well, it's just fun to do, kind of like to test your skills a little bit. Okay, cool. So we got that one out of the way. Now, there are a few more other majorly new things worth talking about today. Of which, do we want to go through the bullish case on this one first or the bearish case on this one first? You know what? First, we'll kind of construct a bullish case, I do guess. Not because I'm inherently a bull nor a bear. I try to be more on the trader side. But for right now, the bulls do have, of course, weekly trend, which has represented the macro direction of this asset better, or not better. It has represented the macro direction of this asset perfectly for the eternity of time thus far. Of course, at some point, that is going to change into a slightly higher term time frame than that. But for right now, works pretty damn well. All right, cool. Elsa's wearing her nice little tiara in the background. She's very happy, and she's got her bag, which if you ever want to make a girl happy, just get her a fucking bag. Don't cost $1,600, but it's still a bag, still a fucking bag. Anyways, looking at the weekly over here for Bitcoin, let me actually go to a more long-term exchange. Okay, so why is $52,000 so important right now for Bitcoin? Because it essentially confirms this segment right here, I'm talking about this segment right here, oh my damn drawing tool is going to go on right now, as a low. And if that is confirmed as a weekly low, then it is by definition a higher low compared to our last major weekly low at $41,000 over here. And if that is true, then it would also, damn it, it would also confirm, let me just get rid of this again, it would also confirm hidden bullish divergence on our weekly RSI right here, which is possible. And we actually did get a very slight but not super impressive drive of it a couple weeks, actually 2-3 weeks ago now, which did precipitate that last $7,000 move from 45 all the way to 52. But until Bitcoin really solidifies itself back above $52,000, I do look at this as a very weak drive of hidden bullish divergence, and you still want to see an actual official closure, preferably on a medium or higher term time frame. Probably a 4-hour works as well in this case, above $52,000. And that would imply that hidden bullish divergence on the weekly would have targets back up towards our last major breakdown points, which would be back around the $58,000 to $59,000 region, and would look really good for the long term, obviously. Now, there's several other things that do suggest that Bitcoin is in one major massive consolidation right now, which if this is one major massive consolidation and it's in a higher low fashion, then it would also imply that the probabilities breaking out to the upside versus the downside are, well, higher, obviously. And first and foremost, I mean, just the fact that Bitcoin's still above the weekly 55 is, a good sign overall. However, it does mean that Bitcoin can't come back down and test it a few more times. In fact, again, filling that wick from the 4th of December is statistically actually rather likely. We've kind of gotten close to it thus far, but still, a quick wick down there and then a reversal would be actually really textbook and classic for myself, at least, for being really more immediately bullish for moves back up towards the $60,000 highs or so. I'm going to explain soon enough why I do not think that Bitcoin's going to be going back around the current all-time high, at least for this month. And I think earliest would be February, actually. And I'll explain why in a second here. But for what it's worth, that would be kind of best case scenario, at least in my opinion, for January right now. Okay, cool. So we've got that. And also, why is it likely a consolidation? Well, we're seeing this whole correction come on, declining volatility, basically ever since February, March highs of this massive formation right here. And you expect volatility to come down and consolidate amongst a macro consolidation. I mean, that is what it essentially measures. It's measuring the dispersion of returns, right? So the dispersion of returns trending down over time would imply that, price action ranges are getting smaller and smaller and smaller relative to the look back period in this case, which would imply, again, the maturing of this consolidation. So this is I think rather obvious on a weekly. However, the even more impressive thing would be on a monthly right here. And the monthly on this new tick is basically back down around the same levels that we saw about a year and a half ago in June, July of 2020. And just as a weird thing, maybe weird, maybe not, but just Bitcoin historically, anytime that we do see these very low volatility reads on this BBWP indicator, we do see macro lows actually. So the last time that we were this low, in fact, the only time that we were even comparably this low on monthly BBWP was coming in from the reversal after the flu dump in June and July, before going from about 9,000 all the way up to 65,000 bucks before this next major, consolidation over here. Same thing on the one prior to that, which would be back on over in January of 2019 on the last macro cycle low at about 3,100. See, it's actually rather low there as well, even though not necessarily as low as what we see right now for what it's worth. And then of course, the only other time that we've seen it, comparably this low before as well was coming in from September 2015. And again, this is what we're doing right now. This is what happened last summer in 2020. And then this was your 2019 lows. And then this is, your 2015 lows right here before going from, $200 all the way up to $20,000 over the next couple of years. So I thought that was rather interesting because Bitcoin has a history of resolving these low volatility periods on the monthly specifically and the weekly as well to a lesser extent to the upside. Doesn't mean that's going to happen today or tomorrow though. I do think that this probably happens, if it is going to happen, it probably happens around the end of this quarter, but there is a very specific reason why I do not think that Bitcoin will be trading back up towards $60,000 or basically anywhere around the prior all-time high at $69,000 anytime soon. Why is that? Okay, in order to address that question, we need to go over here back into our fundamental chart. And again, this is a bit new information. We're going to go over to the monthly, and I want to explain why I am focusing so much on this damn accumulation distribution indicator over here. This is essentially the net delta indicator of Bitcoin, and basically it has been perfect in judging the macro reversals both to the upside and the downside by just indicating very simply a slope change on this indicator. So anytime that we've seen it get a negative slope, that has been your corrective phases at best, crash phases at worst. Anytime we've gotten a positive slope coming in from the bottom end over here, those have been your macro cycle lows, actually macro cycle lows, not just like major lows, but macro lows. So for example, we can go towards the last time that we saw a slope change to the upside. That was May 2020, coming after the old flu dump, again, about a year and a half ago, a little bit more than that now. And then we actually saw it get a negative slope right here in January, February of 2020. Might I remind you, that was literally at least 1 month, maybe a month and a half before the flu dump. Now, just because it does have a downward slope change like that, I'm not going to necessarily say that every time it's going to be a 50% dumpola, but in this case, it was one of the only indicators that I can think of that actually was indicating it is not like Bitcoin was bearish at that time, like a month before as well for the macro. And then of course, the time before that we saw an upside slope change was coming in January of 2019. And of course, that was on a very low volatility period as well, as you already know. And that was this low right here. Of course, the time before that to the downside was this baby right here on the bull trap of 2018, and so on and so forth. We don't need to go through all of this right now. But the reason why I don't think that Bitcoin will be going back around its all-time highs, at least for this month, and I think at earliest would be February, is because right now we still have a downward slope on this. And what's interesting about this, when I went through all of the iterations, is that when you have a downward slope shifting into an upward slope, for example, this one right here, this one right here, this one right here, or anywhere around, the zero read on this one, on the indicator of itself, like right here is what I mean to be saying. We've never seen Bitcoin trade back above its prior high like that month, or I think in most cases, or I think in all cases, like any of those months. Actually, now that I look at it, yeah, I'm curious how much on average does it take from that read? Well, in this case, April to October, November. Let's just say November, back around your prior highs. So yeah, I don't know my months. May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Okay, that's 7 months, or yeah, 7 months. Okay, so a while. This one over here, January 2019, I wouldn't necessarily say you test around your all-time highs, but on a closing basis, you do after that. And again, it takes about half a year. This one over here on this slope change takes, this must be like a year, I'm guessing, from August 2015 all the way up to, didn't really even test it until February 2017, so very, very far away. And then the only other iteration that we have other than this to the upside was back on over here from May 2012, turning up, and we don't test the prior highs until October 2012. So all of these are taking like actually half a year at minimum to test the all-time high after that. for what it's worth. So I guess I might even go as far as saying that I don't think that Bitcoin's maybe making new all-time. Man, that's going to be an incendiary statement. Look, I'm just relaying what the data is saying. Please understand that I'm trying my hardest not to put my personal opinion on these things, but the data is as the data is. And this is kind of like a small insight into the way that I just backtest my strategies. I'm looking at the data. I'm looking at the backtesting of it. What is the percent hit rate? What do these signals look like? And then what does it typically, take over time? That's basically the whole game. That's basically the whole game. And by the way, if you made it this far anyways, look, that's going to be probably the most important part of any program, of any educational program that I'd have anyway. So look, like if you're looking to get into trading, understand you kind of just seen it right there. All it is back testing, then measuring your statistics and probabilities, seeing if it's acceptable to yourself, and then putting that strategy to work. That's fucking it. Fucking crazy, man. But the crazy thing is that very few people will actually do that. I mean, that's how low the bar is in order to just, I guess, get somewhere that you actually want to be. Fair enough. All right, to each their own. I get it. People have fucking lives out there. So fair enough. Also, it should be known that monthly MFI, so money flow index, which is basically like an RSI with like a volume component, actually has bearish divergence confirmed on that as well, which is not great, we'll say. So, okay. We've gone through all of that. I've kind of explained why I don't think that Bitcoin is going to be making new all-time highs anytime soon. It could test, maybe around 59, 60,000 bucks, but probably not anytime soon. So should we talk about worst case scenarios? Should we talk about best case scenarios? Well, I guess what would be most relevant right now is still going back on over here and saying, hey, I cannot, personally speaking, and this is opinion from my personal just sort of strategies and proclivities, I cannot get bearish on this asset, especially as long as we're above $41,000. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin can't come back down around there. Again, that is my validation of the move right there, and more importantly, a validation of an upside move back above this region right here, to kind of help me guide those biases essentially. So until that really happens, I'm just not going to talk about like significant massive downside targets that are further down than the bottom side of our range. I think best Bitcoin would do to the downside is a wick somewhere down around the yellow 21 exponential average on the monthly right here, which by the way, guess where that one is? Just above $37,000. Very fucking interesting right there, because that would still, even if Bitcoin does come back down around that region and put in a wick there, would still be a higher low than the last hash ribbons indicator. Very fucking interesting. Anyways, I didn't fully go over the reason why I think that this is one massive consolidation, but basically let's address that now. So we spoke about the volatility on the monthly and the weekly declining, so you expect that during your long-term consolidations. We also expect to see volume going off from left to right as well, something like this. And by the way, this is starting to get rather full within the towards this apex here, and about 70 to 75% full of this whole formation is typically when you're most likely to break. And in this case, that would be suggesting maybe later this month, a little bit more likely in February, and I think at latest March, we do kind of expect something like that, which would be very interesting because going off the accumulation distribution indicator, might be that might be a bit of a stretch, or at least statistically speaking, it's not that relevant to be looking for like new all-time high pushes. At least for a few months, but maybe it plays within that equation, just low probability we're talking about right now. Okay, so we spoke about that. And also, what is the formation right now? Well, with higher lows along the way, we would be looking at this as one massive ascending triangle, which does have a higher probability to break out to the upside than the downside. And again, when you're about 70 to 75% full towards your apex of this, which would be actually more in like February, March in this case, that's when you're most likely to break. I think at latest, March, April, probably latest, like late March, early April is probably the latest. And yes, there is a technical target to be made on this one as well, all the way up to about 95,000 bucks. But here's also, now I want to represent the blue law side well here. Again, by first understanding that Bitcoin can come back down to about $37,000. It's definitely possible. $41,000, even like in some ways likely, you might even say. Again, understand where the validation of that move actually does occur. But for right now, when you look at this, we see the monthly 21 coming in right around that region, which is where you do see your corrections a lot of the time in generally bullish markets on like the very, very nasty downside moves for what it's worth. And then also, it's kind of where your rising bottoms would be. What else is also consistent with that? Well, if I can zoom in a little bit right here, you'll notice that the 618 Fibonacci retracement is basically where Bitcoin's put in its lows thus far on that last dumpola from December 4th at about $41,000 to $42,000 on that wick low. And that is known as the golden pocket for that reason. And if you are looking at this from a GAN perspective, shout out to Mr. Jace, shout out to the Pizzino brothers. Actually, really, both of them are great. Definitely should check them out. They're both like dialed back and reasonable people. But you'll notice the 0.5 area is right around $45,000, pretty much exactly where we're at right now. And in GAN theology, that is thought of as like the balancing point, meaning that in a consolidation, when you are above the 50% retracement level, you are thought of as, more in a bullish posturing, more in a strong posturing for upside continuation relative to that time frame. In this case, we're looking at a weekly and a monthly, so high-term timeframes, obviously. By the same token, below that region, and as you can see right now, Bitcoin is kind of catching its footing right around there thus far, is thought of as weak and more likely, or putting higher probabilities breakup to the downside of that formation overall. So for right now, Bitcoin actually still remains above that region, which is better for the long term. So again, if you're on the very high term timeframes, Bitcoin is actually still very much bullish. Bitcoin is still, it's in a bullish consolidation. I wouldn't say like it's bullish immediately on the long term timeframes. Again, I don't think that Bitcoin's putting in new highs anytime soon for the more impatient people out there. But I do think that it's interesting nonetheless. So we spoke about that. Also, why is this area interesting right here as well? Just generally speaking, the low $40,000 to upper $30,000 regions. Well, going back to this chart over here, we have to once again go over this damn thing, which is what? Which is the Bitcoin log curves chart, of which we do see a very lovingly historical relationship between all of these regions over the long-term history of Bitcoin, going back to the Genesis. Basically, in the most simplistic way of explaining this, Bitcoin puts in its major macro cycle lows with spikes down into the green zone. It puts in its mid zone, typically its mid zone consolidations in the yellow zone, and all cycle macro highs have been met with a test, usually a spike, into the red zone here. So we have 1, 2, 3 representing the 3 cycles thus far. We're working on a 4th cycle over here. Now I want to, let's go through this a little bit more. So the yellow zone of this Bitcoin log curves chart has accurately gotten, the mid-cycle, like I said, consolidation. So you see the most obvious one over here in 2013, a little bit less so in 2011. Now, if we went down to a daily, it would actually show up there just for what it's worth. But because, things were so young over there, a weekly is, barely going to get it. And then, of course, you see it to a decent extent over here in 2017, that spike low over there, and then boom, works its way through, although not really spending too much time there as you did in 2013. And what do you know? Thus far, Bitcoin has kind of, caught its footing around the yellow zone right here. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect on this, but just around there is good enough. Could we get a wick down to the top side of the green zone, which, by the way, guess where that is? That's in the low $40,000 territory again. Yes, possible. Just don't want to see any closures below there, of course. So you can base off that a few more times. That's fine. Just don't want to see any closures below there. Again, this is, not super specific. Just needs to be around there, basically. Anyways, I want to take this one step further by basically putting on my drawing tools. So let me go back on over here. Okay, let me get rid of some of these babies right here. I forgot to say, make sure to hit the like and dirt button and subscribe as well. Oh, there you go. It actually would help, but fair enough. Look, only if you find value in these videos. We're already 27 minutes in, so I know that the strong majority of people have already clicked off. That's fine. We got the people here that are proper to be here. Okay, so I want to dial in this 2013 segment over here, specifically relevant to our current one going on right here, where you basically see that Bitcoin kind of likes these ascending triangles. It likes the triangles. I like triangles too because they have a high hit rate, basically, but basically, see Bitcoin put an ascending triangle on the lows in 2011, 2012, breaks out, puts another ascending triangle right here in the yellow zone, and boom, busts on through to the upside, putting in the cycle highs at the red zone. Interesting. Well, we have the same thing going on, just to a greater degree over here, being that it is a higher, higher market cap asset now, it's probably going to take some more time. And what do you know? Got the same thing going on right here. We have one massive ascending triangle, busts on through. Bitcoin puts another ascending triangle in the yellow zone. Very, very interesting. So let's take this one step further after that. I'm going to put on a Fibonacci extension and basically put it in from the base of the cycle consolidation lows. And you'll notice that the mid-cycle consolidation over here consolidates between the 1.618 Fibonacci extension and puts in the lows at the 1.272. Interesting. Well, interesting. And what do you know? Bitcoin tops out the 2.272, which is that official test to the red zone in the Bitcoin log curves chart over there as well. Now, of course, we don't actually have the red zone extended towards those regions, but I'm just going to draw a regression over here. Kind of, you know, best fits essentially from the top side of that. It's probably going to be something like that, or close. Look, close enough is close enough. It's probably a little bit too aggressive, so maybe redo it in this case. But I'm thinking some like, come on, something like that, because it is kind of losing its curvature over time. Anyways, let's throw on the same thingy over here as well. Okay, hey, stop that. Hey, okay, here we go. Again, Bitcoin does have the I'm taking the fib extension from the consolidation right here. We can see our mid-cycle consolidation is putting in the lows at the 1.272. We have the highs at the 1.618. Very interesting. Now dial in this 1.414 region right here. You can see that Bitcoin spiked to it near the end of this consolidation thus far. We actually have the same thing in 2013 as well. Over here, the 1.414, I'm referring to this one right here. You see it kind of just briefly spike down near the end of the consolidation and then boom, just straight fucking vertical after that. Well, we have something relatively similar going on over here. And well, you know, can Bitcoin come back down and test around there again? Yes. Is that kind of the same $41,000 region that we were speaking about earlier? Yes, it is. So I thought that was rather interesting. And then you'll also notice that if I were to draw a regression on this, you know, on the red zone over here, and we did look at the 2.272 extension, which is actually where you did top out in 2013, that would actually be pretty much directly in line with that, which would be in like the $180,000 to $200,000 region. And understand that like very, very small changes in this amount account for like humongous changes in price action. So I'd go as far as saying, and to kind of maybe address a thumbnail in this video, no, I don't think that Bitcoin's gonna get to $250,000 this cycle. I think at best, you know, maybe it gets like a wick up there in like a really crazy scenario. I don't know, maybe like a spot ETF gets accepted and then like a couple more countries accept Bitcoin as well. Possible, of course, but I think closing above there especially is going to be extremely unlikely just based off the history. And by the way, all of these cycles have kind of topped out around the same area, in fact, which I'll just briefly throw on so that you can verify yourself. So we have this one over here. The 2017 cycle topped out around the 2.414, a little bit above there, but below the 2.618. And then the first cycle topped out actually at the 2.618, but all kind of topping around, you know, in like a rhymey area right there. But these two in particular are very much rhyming with each other thus far. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen like that, but you know, just kind of putting two and two together and having a few assumptions from there. Well, that would be, I guess, relevant towards that. Okay, so we went through all of that. We covered the weekly bullish divergence, the weekly hidden bullish divergence that would be confirmed above 52. I do want to briefly go over this one as well. I know that we've done this a million goddamn times, but this would also be along the same vein that the low 40s, upper 30s is kind of where you're looking for on the next macro cycle low. If you are bullish long-term, most likely, which is this chart over here. I won't go through this one fully in depth because we've done it too many times and it's probably gonna be annoying, but basically this is the CME stochastic momentum chart, of which I marked off all 8 iterations with these vertical blue lines that correlate with the same test down towards this green horizontal bar at the bottom here at 11.5 reads. And you can see that, well, you know, they pretty much all have a decent reaction. Even in the context of very nasty downside markets, we do get some pretty, you know, impressive bounces over here, like August 2018, which was the least impressive of all these iterations, still producing about a 25% bounce to the upside, which I'll just measure out for you. And again, that was significantly like the lowest one. All the other ones were 50% or more, but 2 of them thus far, and perhaps this third one over here, were macro cycle lows. So let's focus on these for a second. All right, first one from 2018, 2019 macro cycle low at 3,100. Bitcoin puts in a tentacle formation in the format of an ascending triangle. Okay, interesting. Well, we get the same thing in March 2020 as well. Ascending triangle right here before busting on through. And then what is Bitcoin doing right now? As long as we do hold, or Bitcoin holds the $40,000 higher low, well, you do have one massive ascending triangle in the making as well here. Okay, interesting. Well, let's take that a step further into the daily stochastic momentum signature. So put this one in your mind's eye right here. This is the most recent one coming in from early December, basically, where you get one base on the green horizontal, okay, gets rejected. Second base gets rejected right here, ever so slightly, and then third base is accepted, and then boom, off to the races. Okay, interesting. Well, let's go back to March 2020. Same thing over here, or not close thing over here. One base gets rejected, second base gets accepted. What happens after that? And pay attention here very, very specifically. Bitcoin still stays in the consolidation range for about a couple months, as you can see from this area right here, where it gets confirmed. And you do pull back into a higher low fashion a little bit, actually right around here now that I look at it. Sorry, it's right around here. Okay, so I actually need to do a little bit of a better job on that because that actually does change around the analysis a little bit, but this is actually going to support the analysis even more. So you get this first high right here. Okay, that is this blue vertical bar, and then we get our higher low right here. Our first higher low after putting in the actual lows, that's at the 618 Fibonacci retracement. Very interesting. Still takes about a month and a half after that, but busts on through and never looks back ever again, basically. This one is particularly similar to our current one as well, where you get two bases that get rejected on the green horizontal bar right here, and then gets accepted. Bitcoin puts in its first upside move towards the range highs, puts in that first high right here, comes back down, puts in a bit of a higher low. Where does that higher low come in around? Well, obviously over here, which by the way is the 618 Fibonacci retracement. You can just barely see it right there, but right here is what I'm trying to say. 618 Fibonacci retracement. So hits this area right here first on the daily stochastic momentum, basically right around here. It looks like right around the neutral zone. Basically, that puts in the first local high, pops back down into a higher low at the 618 is essentially what I want to talk about. And then like 2 months later, it busts on through and does incredible things to the upside. Okay, great. Anyways, our most recent example over here, again, we have the fractal of that signature already, and then look at this. We pop up to the horizontal region on this area where all of the other ones have essentially kind of started to put in some highs around the range highs, which you're at the range high right here, $52,000. That was the significance of last weekend, and getting rejected right there, and then pulls back into, hopefully, if this holds true, a higher low right around the 618 Fibonacci retracement, which is about $47,000. Very fucking interesting. Why again? Because that would be holding to fruition with that. And basically we just, in order to validate this, we just don't want to see any closing lower lows than the $45,000 region that we saw back on over here from middle of December. As long as that does not happen, this whole idea and this whole potential bullish setup is still available. All of the conditions up till now have been validated. But the most important one to fully validate this is, of course, getting back above $52,000, or on a closing basis like 51,500 or so. It would be like the most aggressive way of doing it. And again, you can kind of look at this consolidation right here. Let me just get rid of that. And looking at it, coming into an apex, probably looking at resolution mid to late January out of the short-term range. And if Bitcoin does take the upside resolution of this without closing on lower lows first, then, well, all of those were macro lows before never going lower ever again. And as you know, still took about a couple months from those price points in order to bust on through to the upside, which right here, where's our 75% full region? That would be right around late January, early February. So still pretty consistent with the other things that we've been looking at as well. So I thought this was rather interesting. Now I will go over a few things over here. Man, this video is getting real fucking long now, but might as well do it. In the market data tab, there are two things that are significantly interesting to myself that do suggest Bitcoin is more likely to play out a downside move first rather than hold this $47,000 low first. So, bit of a somber in detail. Turn your head away, Bullahs, if you're ignorant and want to remain ignorant. But basically, the global leverage ratio right here is at the highest level it's ever been ever, meaning that there are way more leverage positions in comparison to spot positions ever in the recorded history since we started, mining this data over here. And all of these iterations, except for one in the past year, have resulted in downside moves. That would be this high over here in April, this high over here in September, and the more recent one in November, of course, at $69,000. Now, there is one kind of spike right here in July, late July, that did correlate well with the current cycle low, or the current mid-cycle low at $30,000. But I'll also have you know that that was actually the lowest of all of those 4 iterations now that did have relatively high leverage ratios. So might be said that it's an outlier. What's even more sombering is that the global open interest over here, anytime that we've gotten above about 11.5 billion or 12 billion, basically, let me see, sorry, it's more like 13 billion actually, alongside having a high leverage ratio as well, all of them have been downside resolved, all of them. This one over here in April, this one over here in September, this one over here in November. And funnily enough, and I don't know if this is going to work, but what I'd say is that you could draw a regression on the very lows from the global open interest. Oh, wow, you can't see this. Sorry. Let me remove my face for a second here. You can see that all of the lows on the global open interest, you could kind of draw a regression between them, and it actually has worked out rather well. Problem with that is that if you're looking at this current area right here as likely to put in a low, this one that we're kind of coming down off of, you'd probably expect this next washout on the leverage ratios and open interest to come back down somewhere around your 11 billion marker. And of course, that would likely be a downside resolution as all of these higher open interest rates have been kind of met with. So yeah. Does that come alongside of Bitcoin testing back down towards here, the $41,000 region? Not a big problem, but definitely a big problem for the more immediate bulls. Does it come alongside with an actual break of that region and major wicks down? Possible as well. But again, as long as Bitcoin is especially coming in not closing below about $41,000, I do still look at this asset as still macro bullish, and pullbacks are likely to be bought. The question is this the pullback that you're looking for right here, or does Bitcoin come lower? Statistics say lower. And again, the hash ribbons indicator signal would still be valid even with coming back down to 41. Could even wick down below 37. Just don't want to see any closures on a daily below 37. And that's not to say that we might not have a black swan as well, but those are low probabilities, so fair enough. All right, cool. I did forget to go over like the extremely short-term timeframes right here, but all right, 4 hour closure back above 48,000 bucks, and I look for this one to pop back up towards 49.5. Maybe we just briefly go check out momentum over here as well, and then send you off on your very merry way. Daily stochastic on spot price action is correcting significantly. 48,650, bless you, sir. So that is, a little bit more on the bullish side, but of course, still want to see it actually cross above, and we're still, more than $1,000 away from 48.5, but kind of around that $48,000 region regardless. 12 hour remains with upside momentum above $47,000. Interesting. 6 hour is also up as long as we're above 46,820, currently above there, by the way. 4 hour is also going to be remain up as long as we're above 47.1, and hourly is also freshly up above 47. So short term actually is showing a little bit of hopium right here. If Bitcoin does pop back above and close specifically above about 48,100, I would be looking for next short-term move up towards about 49.5. Come back to it after that. Again, doesn't really do anything for Bitcoin as long as we're below 52, but it would put you above the midpoint of this range, which would be generally good right here as well. And personally speaking, do I think that Bitcoin's going to bounce off this region yet again? Yeah. All right, cool. That's going to do it for today. Apologies for the extremely long video, but I wanted to get all my thoughts out on this price action. Happy New Year, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever fucking holiday you're celebrating over there. I hope that it's going well for you. And if it's just a regular Sunday, happy Sunday as well. With that said, take care, and I will see you in the next one.